Hello?
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's educational forum, Protecting Older Adults from Financial Scams and Fraud. I'm Walt Laskos. I'm a resident of Grafton. I've worked for more than 20 years within the credit union industry as an executive doing public relations work. Now I work as an independent communications consultant, focusing a lot of my time on protecting older adults from scams and fraud. And also, most important, I'm one of you. I'm a senior. I'm an older adult. And it took a while to get here, but all of a sudden we're here, right? Well, you know, we have a packed agenda this morning. We have several VIPs with us who wish to share some of their comments. And we also have our discussion to follow where we will watch some videos showing examples of scam, and then we'll hear from our panelists what they have to say about each one of them. But first, our Senator Michael Moore just learned that the President of the Senate called a meeting later this morning. So that means he needs to leave Grafton by 10:45 if he's going to make that meeting. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Senator Michael Moore.
Thank you, and hopefully I won't be breaking any speed limits. Trying to get there. And actually, as I just learned that I am actually part of this age group now. Being 60 years old, I guess I fall within the classification of ARP. I think it was actually 50.
Didn't you get the dreaded letter about from?
Yeah, that was 10 years ago, but the official classification of a senior. So I guess now I can come and join the activities at the senior center. So, but good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm thrilled to be here joining you for this opportunity to learn about the dangers of financial scams and frauds targeting older adults in our community. Keeping yourself and your information safe starts with you. There are a few simple tips you can use that will protect you from the most common scams. Never give out your address, personal details, or financial information on your computer or over the phone, unless you are 100% sure you're dealing with the real company. If you're ever suspicious about a phone call, you should hang up, call the company's official line, and talk to their consumer protection or their customer service people to ensure that it is in fact the company you're dealing with. Never give out your credit card information, numbers. Always be cautious of anyone who wants you to pay for a product or buy a gift card or anything over the phone or the internet. But there are things we can do in the legislature to try to help stop scams and fraud attempts before they even start. The information you share online matters. In a world where so much of our lives happen online and companies are subject to data breaches on what feels like a daily basis, the importance of ensuring your data belongs to you, and we cannot overstate how important it is for you to be very guarded with that information. I can't tell you the calls that we have gotten from seniors or family members of seniors who have been victims. Their life savings, their retirement savings have been just taken away from them, and it leaves them and their families in jeopardy for the rest of their lives. In May, the committee I chair, the Joint Committee on Advanced Information Technology, the Internet, and Cybersecurity, announced that our committee had favorably voted out the Massachusetts Data Privacy Act. This bill is a sweeping piece of legislation that establishes baseline data minimization standards by requiring all companies to collect and possess only what data is reasonably necessary for their products or their services. Included in the bill are provisions requiring sensitive data to be handled under more restrictive standards. This means that qualifying data cannot be processed or used for targeted advertising or shared with a third party without the user's express consent. This includes precise geolocation information, biometric and genetic information, data of minor children, and types of data that reveal an individual's race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious beliefs, or status as a victim of a crime. Whoever would have thought that we would have to worry about someone stealing our biometric or genetic information? Does everyone understand what the biometric information is? Like eye scans, fingerprints, anything to do with your body, that type of information. Further, this bill requires that big tech companies and data brokers must display clear, conspicuous requests for consent to collect data using straightforward language. Importantly, the law would specify that companies cannot assume that a lack of action implies consent, such as clicking out of the consent request window. Additionally, Massachusetts Data Privacy Act states that companies who possess user data must establish policies that protect their information from cyber attacks and other privacy risks. It also requires that data brokers register with the Office of Consumer Affairs Business Regulation to provide reasonable oversight. So if anyone, what a data broker is, basically every new technology or that comes about spawns a new industry or a new profession. Data brokers, their sole job is to work with tech companies and sell your information. That's how they get the money. That's how they make their profits. They'll work with these companies, they'll collect the data, then they go out and they market it and sell it to other companies. So if this legislation were to pass that we just released, this would require them to register. So we'd have an accurate list in the state of who is actually employed as a data broker, and we can put some regulatory controls on what they can and can't sell for information. Importantly, the law would specify that companies cannot assume that the lack of action. Oh, I already read that part. These are big, important steps toward keeping your sensitive information safe from bad actors, private or public. Big technology companies hold an incredible amount of power over us simply due to the things we search online, the way we use our phones, and our habits on and off social media. As I stated, the geolocation, what this would stop if a woman was going into a healthcare facility. This would stop the ability of a company of tracking a woman or a man or anyone going into certain locations, so that data can't be used for some other purpose, that the individual going into whatever facility they're going into can be used against them or for some other nefarious purpose. We must have the ability to simply say no to their invasive data collection practices and have the power to hold them accountable when they violate this trust. This is especially true if they do not adequately secure your data. Allowing bad actors to steal your information and use it to scam you out of your hard-earned money. I'm very proud that in Massachusetts that we've actually stepped forward and we've been able to draft and release from committee this piece of legislation. Some of the advocates that we've actually been dealing with have said that if we can get this passed through the legislature, that this would most likely be the strongest piece of data privacy that in the country. And we've used it modeling after the states of California, Vermont. We even allow in this legislation, which I will say the big tech companies are not happy with. We have a 93A clause in Massachusetts. That's the consumer protection law. And it gives the right of legal action to the Attorney General's office. Well, we in this legislation extend that to the Attorney General's office and also to the individual, so that if you individually feel that your rights were violated or your information was illegally sold, you would have the right to go to court and take action, to take it outside of just the responsibility of government. Beyond the Massachusetts Data Privacy Act, the legislature is considering a number of other bills aiming at securing your digital systems and creating protocols for what would happen when a data breach does happen. If these bills are passed, this would help us protect base data on and offline. I want to thank you for inviting me here today. I also want to thank Homefield Credit Union, and the ARP for inviting me here and let me talk to you for a little while. I don't know if I have time, but I'm more than happy to answer some questions if anyone has any questions about what we're trying to do legislatively. But other than that, thank you very much. And I'm sorry for being so quick. But we actually have a formal session, so we're going to be voting today on, actually today what we're voting on today is the information technology legislation for the state. So hopefully we'll get that passed today, and that actually will provide some more enhancements to what we're doing here in Massachusetts. And actually, see your town administrator here. We've got, so you know, we've got $50,000 that will be earmarked to the town of Grafton to support any technology requests or help that you may need. Other than that, thank you.
So, Senator, do you have police escort, press, and all following you down the pike?
I'll see to it. Just go ahead.
Maybe-
I'll call ahead for you.
Hey, maybe someday, right? You never know. Thank you, Senator.
I'd get a helicopter. Wasn't Jane Swift had a helicopter?
Hell yeah. Don't do
There you
that.
go.
Here we go.
Thank you. Okay, folks, now let's turn to welcoming a note from the hosts of today's event. From Homefield Credit Union, the president and CEO, Carl Moisen, as well as Shannon Smith, who heads up the senior center here. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Okay. All right. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special presentation. And thank you to Walter and Homefield Credit Union for putting this all together. Thankfully, there was not much work that we had to do at the Grafton Senior Center for this. It's so important for us to stay up to date on all the different scams because they are ever evolving. I'm very excited to have all these distinguished speakers here to discuss and educate all of us really on all the different scams that are here. Please don't forget that the Grafton Senior Center is also always here for you if you have any questions. We get phone calls asking, someone just asked for my social security number. Should I give it to them? Please, bring us all the calls. We will tell you what to do as best as we can. And if not, we will find the right person to give you the answer. Thank you, enjoy, have a good time.
For an individual that said that she doesn't like public speaking, she did a fantastic job.
Sure
didn't
don't.
she? Thank you for coming. We'll make this brief. Having been the CEO and president of Homefield for the better part of 6 years now, it's truly an honor to deal with our members in the town of Grafton and other areas and other towns in the marketplace. We see fraud being perpetrated almost every day, and we as a staff and as a team consider ourselves, and I use this term within the credit union, as centurions at the gate. We try to hold back, and we try to inform every member that comes in and has these questions about why did I get this call, so on and so forth, and we just try to protect them as much as we can. It's not foolproof, but I think we have a pretty good track record in defending our members from these type of scams. So I appreciate you all coming. I appreciate the distinguished panel and staff. I can't thank Walter enough and Shannon enough for all of their support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carl and Shannon. Well, in planning today's program, I originally reached out a couple of weeks ago to the Secretary of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, with an invitation to join us here today. But if you've been following the news lately, you'll have noticed that she stepped down from her role as secretary last Friday. However, we do have in her place Jonathan Fielding, who is on the Protective Services team at the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. Jonathan.
Thank you. First, I do not know what happened to Secretary Chen, so I cannot answer that question. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with some of these panelists who I do know and have done presentations with in the past. I'm kind of a low man on the totem pole. But just to give you a little bit of a context of who I am at Elder Affairs, I've been in protective services for about 30 years now, 8 years at the local level, more than 20 years at Elder Affairs. For 30 years, I've been doing work on financial exploitation and scams, working with financial institutions and the public to identify warning signs and get reports in as quickly as we can, both in Massachusetts as well as a national level. Just for you, the Protective Services team is responsible for investigating reports of abuse in adults age 60 and over in Massachusetts. Abuse comes in many forms: physical, emotional, sexual, caregiver neglect, and self-neglect. We're here today to talk about financial exploitation, scams, and fraud. When it comes to financial, there are a couple of key points that I want you to remember. Financial exploitation, and I'm going to keep saying this over and over again, often hits close to home. I can guarantee you that most of you know somebody who has either been exploited by a family member, a friend, or has been scammed by somebody that you don't know. Okay, I'm going to stress that again. Many of you probably know somebody who has been exploited by somebody they know, a family member, a friend, or has been scammed by somebody that they don't know. All right? Second, because we've been scammed or exploited by family members, it's often difficult to spot the warning signs. The warning signs are often ignored, overlooked, or pushed aside because the scammers oftentimes will tell us to do so. Or they will coach us or give us these false stories to tell the public so that it looks like we're making money in investments. We have this wonderful romance that we're developing, and it's not a scam. Okay? What I want to do for you today, as part of my opening remarks, is give you two scenarios. One, which is back from the 1990s, which really helped me frame why I'm pushing the importance of education and prevention related to financial exploitation. The other is something that happened or started to happen about 4 years ago. Back in the 1990s, we started in Massachusetts, the first in the nation, the Massachusetts Bank Reporting Project. In doing so, one of the cases that we framed our project around was two 90-plus-year-old sisters, retired teachers in southeastern Massachusetts, who had developed or banked a nice retirement fund from teaching and had general habits that they had fallen into in terms of banking, writing checks, habits that we all fall into normally, and those habits changed. Okay? They started writing larger checks, more frequent checks. Instead of $100 a week here and there, they started writing $500 checks more frequently, $1,000 checks, $2,000 checks. At some point in time, somebody should have said something, whether it was family, the bank, the credit union, the public, anybody who had connections to these two sisters. Nobody said anything until there were 88 checks written, 88 transactions, and $150,000 was gone. These two sisters, who had banked, put their retirement aside, had been taken for $150,000. Now, in today's world, that $150,000 and 88 transactions probably would have been about $500,000 or $1 million. So in comparison, we had a significant problem and the warning signs were missed. We developed a project that identified those warning signs and said, as a bank, as a credit union, you need to recognize these. You as the public need to recognize these. Us sitting in this room all recognize these, and we can go forward and say we have a problem and we need to report it. We need to do something about it. Okay? Because the sooner we recognize it and the sooner we report it, whether it's reporting it to Protective Services or reporting it to law enforcement, something's going to get done. We can put a stop to it. Unfortunately, not all warning signs are that easily recognized. Or, in the case from 4 years ago, sometimes, as I did, as a victim of a scam, we ignore them. There are certain data breaches that happen quite frequently. And for those of us that remember, there was that very large data breach, the Equifax data breach, that many of us were part of, unfortunately, including myself. I probably received something in the mail or an email of some sort that said I was a victim or part of the Equifax data breach, and I ignored the information and didn't do anything. In 2020, in fall of 2020, I was remote with COVID, doing my own thing with work, and received a packet of information in the mail from the Department of Unemployment. I was working for the Commonwealth at that point in time. I hadn't been laid off. I was still working and wondered why I was receiving a packet of information from the Department of Unemployment. And panic set in. Was I laid off and my employer didn't tell me? Or did something else happen? And quick investigation on my part, I realized that I was a victim of the Equifax data breach, and the key piece of information they got that I had never secured was my Social Security number. And they used my Social Security number to apply for unemployment. Okay? Fortunately, the scammers were not the brightest. They sent the information to my home address, and I was able to put a stop to it before it progressed any further. I was able to freeze everything, credit cards, bank accounts, put a freeze on all the credit reporting bureaus, and stop everything. There was no loss to me whatsoever. Not everybody is that lucky. Now, the question I got a few months ago, Mike, if you stayed to the training, the question I got was, why haven't you unfrozen your credit reporting? Because everything is still frozen. And the reason is, I'm paranoid. Because once my Social Security number got out there, unless I changed it, that's going to keep getting sold on the black market. And so I'm going to keep my credit reports frozen and unfreeze them when I need to. Because if I unfreeze it, somebody's going to use my Social Security number. 2 months ago, I received a letter in the mail. Somebody had tried to apply for a credit card in my name with my Social Security number. Okay? It can happen to anybody. And that's what I want you to remember. Okay? So what I want you to remember is there are warning signs that we can all spot and see, whether it's with our neighbors, whether it's with our friends, whether it's with our acquaintances, or anybody else. Changes in banking habits, unexplained changes, things that just don't make sense. People stop receiving mail, all right? If somebody's blocking your mail, that becomes a problem. When you start receiving those scam calls or those texts or those pop-up windows on your computer, start ignoring them. Don't respond to them. The technology is so advanced now, all they need is a tidbit of information from you. Whether it's your voice, whether it's you clicking on a window to start getting into your information and start scamming you. Okay? For your family, if there's a question, if you start giving out information, you have any questions, pick up the phone and call the senior center. Pick up the phone and file a protective services report or call your local protective services agency. Call me and ask the question. We can guide you as to what needs to be done, because once this starts down that road and the money's gone, we may be going down a path that may not be reversible. Okay? Any sort of changes in your banking habits. If you're offered a deal too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. If you have to pay money to get a prize, the romance scams, you're going to hear about all of this. Those are all a problem. Those are all warning signs that there's an issue. Put a stop to it. Hang up the phone. If there's a sense of urgency, you're asked to send money right away. The scammers want you to do things right away so that you can't think things through. They're playing on your emotions. That's how they work. All right? That's a problem. Right? These things may seem obvious, but when you get caught up in financial exploitation and scams, you're not thinking things through. And that's how it works. You're thinking things through on an emotional level as opposed to a rational level. Okay? And that's where you have to pull yourself back. All right? So what I want to leave you with is slow things down. Think things through. Talk to a family member. Pick up the phone if you suspect something, if something doesn't seem right. What I always used to tell people is if the hair on the back of your neck stands up, if something doesn't seem quite right, pick up the phone, call in a report. Our elder abuse hotline is there 24/7, 1-800-922-2275. Excuse me. Thank you for coming today. Thank you to the distinguished panel for coming. I know you're going to hear a lot of wonderful information. I will be here if you have any additional questions. And again, thank you for coming. And on behalf of the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, we thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, there's one more VIP that I want to call on today so that we can move forward on this, and that is Andy Jefferson. Andy is the Select Board Vice Chair for the town of Grafton. Andy.
Morning, everybody. I think I may need to work on trying to get my name moved up in the list of speakers because everybody's hit on the speaking points that I had for you already. I'd like to reiterate that again, as we've, some of what we heard, as technology grows, unfortunately, so too does the opportunity for scams and fraud. And equally unfortunate, they tend to target the most vulnerable in our population. I would like to just thank and express my gratitude to Mr. Laskos, the Council of Aging, Homefield Credit Union for putting on and producing the event here today and giving the opportunity to everybody to have a forum to speak. I'd like to thank our state and local officials for coming out today as well and lending their support, and most of all, thank you to our expert panel here, who will be sharing on a critical topic. And thank you for coming out today as well to learn how to better protect yourselves, your friends, and your loved ones.
Thank you, Andy. Well, we're moments away from starting our panel discussion, but before we do, I received a video message from a very special friend that I'd like to share with you now. So if you'd please watch the monitors.
Hi, everyone. It's Congressman Jim McGovern, and I want to thank you for being here to prevent elder fraud. It's just a few days before World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and fraudulent activities targeting elders have never been a more present threat. Every day, scammers steal huge sums of money from families across the country with a special focus on older Americans. While I'd like to think I'm still young, no matter what my kids tell me, none of us are strangers from scams or fraud, especially in the age of the internet. That's why I want Congress to hold big tech companies accountable and demand more action to stop people from getting ripped off. I remain committed to holding big tech accountable for these scams. But in the meantime, prevention is the best medicine. That's what makes sessions like these so valuable. I want to thank all the companies, organizations, and officials who are participating in this event. This will make a real difference in people's lives, and I'm thrilled to support this work in Washington. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and best of luck for an important and impactful event.
Thank you, Congressman. All right, let's move on now to hear some advice and guidance from our distinguished panelists that we've assembled here today. Let me introduce them to you. Eric Garou, he's the Senior Counsel, U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Michael Festa, he's the State Director with AARP Massachusetts, old-time buddy. By the way, Michael is going to be retiring shortly or stepping
Oh, I'm not retiring. I'm just leaving AARP.
Oh, there we go. All right.
We never retire, right, folks?
That's good to hear.
Just keep
Yeah.
going in a different way and probably without a check.
Good to hear. We have with us Mary Freely. She's the director of the new Elder Justice Unit with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Of course, everyone knows Carl. We have Chief of Police for the town of Grafton, Norman Crapel. And we also have Special Agent Zachary Hubach from the United States Secret Service, who are all with us. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. Let me begin by having each of you tell us very briefly a little bit about the work that your organization does on behalf of protecting older adults from financial scams and fraud. Eric, let's begin with you.
Sure. So I'm from the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're the federal regulator of the securities market. That's things like stocks and bonds and certain kinds of promissory notes and other investment products. So a lot of what we do doesn't directly touch on these issues, fighting insider trading or market manipulation efforts that affect the whole broad market. But we do have a strong emphasis on retail investors. That's just regular people investing in the markets. And though we can't legally represent individuals, and that's a real limit to what we can do, we're not going to be able to take on your case directly and win your money back. We do have a robust investor education program to do events like this to try to provide some protection in advance so that you have the skills you need to protect yourselves. And I'll just leave it at that for now.
Michael.
Hi, folks. So I brought along a brochure from AARP, which speaks to the Fraud Watch Network, which AARP has set up and has been functioning now for many, many years. I'll refer to that probably in a couple of the answers, but I hope you'll take that with you on the way out, because you got to pay attention to us, right? But in that brochure, and more to the point about what AARP is doing, obviously a lot of our members, we get 750,000 just in Massachusetts. Many of them have those experiences that were so eloquently referenced by Jonathan. And by the way, I'm one of Jonathan's biggest fans. I really appreciate, as I'm sure we all did, what he covered already. I almost felt like maybe that we're done. We can leave now because he's covered a lot of good stuff. But the point about AARP is that we have so many members who are, one way or another impacted by this. And we decided, frankly, many years ago that we needed to keep a sustained focus on this issue and tangential issues that roll into the ultimate challenge, which is how do we protect our members and the general public. So the thing about the Fraud Watch Network, which is why I'm really going to make the point more than once, is that we refresh and provide ongoing information that at any point in time you can become a member of the Fraud Watch Network. You're going to get emails regularly saying, hey, this month there's something we found out that was going on in South Carolina that you may have relatives or friends in, or you may, whatever. And it is a detailed discussion and information sharing around the current concerns that may be popping up. So it's refreshed, it's focused, it's jam-packed with a lot of good information that I think you'll find useful in keeping yourself safe. So do that, and then we'll be talking about other things later. Walter.
There we go.
Thank you.
Mary.
Good morning. My name is Mary Freely. I'm the director of the Elder Justice Unit at the Attorney General's Office. I want to thank Homefield Credit Union and the Grafton Senior Center for sponsoring this event today. And I want to thank all of you for coming today because these are important issues. You're going to hear over and over a lot of the same themes. We've already heard some, and that's okay because it's really worth repeating given the prevalence of scams and schemes designed to separate you from your hard-earned funds. I'm pleased to speak briefly this morning about the Elder Justice Unit and the work of the Attorney General's Office. What I would say is we've also brought some helpful resources for you. They're also on the AG's website, so if we run out here, you can just Google the Attorney General's Office and find all of these materials there as well. So Attorney General Campbell created the Elder Justice Unit to make the protection of older adults one of her priority issues. And last fall, she created the unit to bring together some of the resources in the office so that there would be a point of contact for people that don't really know where to go in state government. And there are a lot of resources available to you. We also have a community engagement division that engages in events like this one to get out there and talk about scams and schemes, so that you'll hear about them and be familiar with them and not, fall prey to whatever is going on. So with that being said, I know we're going to talk about some of these particular scams, but I just would like to say that financial exploitation of older adults is way too common, and unfortunately, we only see it continue to rise. We get complaints every week about someone losing significant amounts of money to scammers. Exploitation by strangers often takes the form of these scams and schemes of deception. So while we can often go after, attempts to steal you from to steal money from you from legitimate businesses, scammers are harder to target, to find, and often once the money is gone, it's very, very hard to recover. So thank you very much for being here today and for learning about this so that you can be on the front line of preventing and safeguarding your own funds.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks again for being here. As I mentioned in the opening remarks, the credit union staff and our entire frontline team goes through several hours of training to try to determine or detect these type of circumstances taking place within our own membership and our institution. We often see individuals come in that we know on a regular basis. They're doing their normal banking on a weekly basis, and they'll come in with someone new. And so our frontline staff, recognize the name, the member, might still have that passbook, et cetera, and who is this individual? Introduce me, those type of things. And we often find that it's somebody that's trying to manipulate and try to get a hold of some cash for whatever reason. It's usually a family member, as Walt pointed out, or as Jonathan pointed out, but sometimes it's a caretaker. Sometimes it's somebody that comes in on a weekly basis to make sure that that individual is okay, and they're taking them on their errands. So we spend an enormous amount of time trying to train our staff in identifying these circumstances taking place. We have such a great relationship with our membership as well as law enforcement. I think, Chief knows this. We'll get on the phone with somebody that we have an idea of something might be taking place. They'll do their side of the investigation, but one of the things that Jonathan mentioned is we try to delay. We often have people come in and say they want to wire funds overseas. Now, I know this is Grafton, and we're not the hotbed of, financial institution worldwide, but when someone wants to send money overseas, it's an elderly individual or someone that we know that generally doesn't have a lot of dealings with overseas, we throw up all the red flares. What are you trying to accomplish? Well, and a lot of times they get defensive. Oh, I can't tell you, and I'm very cognizant of privacy, so on and so forth. So we delay, and we try to get it out of the individual about what's taking place. I know my parents and my wife's parents have been scammed several times. They try to be scammed. My mom calls me and says, one of my kids is in Canada. No, they're not. They're sitting right next to me. All these type of things that happen, and we do our best as a small community credit union to try to protect our membership. And if you want to join a membership, we would love to have you.
And one of the things that's so important there too is that the credit union is there for the members in the community as like a firewall to make sure that they're protecting anyone from losing their money. That's why they'll delay. That's why they'll be asking questions to try and find out, because a lot of times the scammers tell you, oh, keep quiet, or here's what to tell them. Tell them that you're doing renovation in your home or something like that. They give you all these excuses to say, but you have to trust the credit union and trust the police department. Chief Grapeau, I want to hear from you because here's one of our firewalls right here locally within the community. Chief?
First, I want to thank Homefield for doing this and inviting me to be on the panel. I think most of you probably know me, been here 20 years, so if you don't, I'm sorry for that and hope to meet you later. But as far as Homefield is concerned, we get a lot of cooperation from the bank, as Carl said. When somebody comes in and makes or tries to make a transaction, they'll notify us, and it's happened several times, and we've had several saves. Some people, though, go elsewhere where there's not the personal service or they're not known, and they do get scammed. And we'll be talking about the unemployment scam. It's not funny, but when you mention that during the height of COVID, I think we received anywhere from 10 to 12 complaints per week for thousands and thousands of dollars for that. And it's still happening. We probably get 2 or 3 a month now in the same format. So they're still out there. And, you know, I always liken these scams to cold calls by real estate, whatever, where you figure if you're going to send out 100, 200, 300 notices per day, and you get 5 or 6 that respond and you can get the money, and you're getting about $10,000 per day, that's a pretty good day's work. You know, all you got to do is send out that email off a list that they'll have, however they get it, through, you know, these brokers, whatever that sell your information. So, but I want to thank, once again, Carl and Homefield Credit Union. We are partners, especially in one big thing that I noticed, we've had a couple of scams this week. We get complaints all the time. Unfortunately, people listen. They'll call us and tell us somebody asked for this, somebody asked for that. I didn't give it to them. Grafton Police Department, you know, we try 2 things. First of all, we try to educate. I'm going to give myself a plug. Who reads the Chiefs column here? Yeah, that's it. Come on. It's been out there for 20 years. You don't get the Grafton News, well, then you have to sign up for our Facebook page then. But we put the Chiefs column out there, and we try to educate the public whenever we can. And I just want to reiterate, too, it's not just online scamming or whatever. Those of you that own a home, plenty of scams, and this is the time of year for the chimney cleaning scams, the paving, the seal coating scams. We get a few of those every year. You'll see the solicitors out there, and, you know, we'll probably get into it later on. But it's not just electronic scams. So if you say, I don't have a computer, I don't use my computer, I don't have to worry about it, they're still out there. And, you know, if they would put these scammers would put their resources to doing something good, you know, probably be a better world, because they're smart. You have to say, they are smart. But as mentioned earlier, when you have somebody that contacts you and they say they're from the government or they're the marshals or the sheriffs or whatever, and they say, well, you can take care of this, send me Bitcoin, send me Apple Play cards. No government is going to ask you for that, and no government entity is going to ask you for your personal information. So we'll get into it more, I'm sure, but it's simple, but for some people, they feel pressured. Or as was saying earlier, they feel that, hey, I'm going to get this if I do this, you know. I'm going to make a lot of money and I don't have to do anything. That never happens. That never happens. So just hopefully when you leave here today, we're all a little bit wiser, and we won't have to deal with the complaints that do come in, unfortunately. And whatever you learn today, pass on to your friends. The people that couldn't make it, please. That's how you get it, through word of mouth. Talking, you have social circles, please pass that information on. If they ever have any questions, with all the other numbers you have, you can always reach out to me or somebody from the police department, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't take any time. Pick up the phone and say, hey, I just got this call, I just got this email, what do you think? And we'll take it from there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I think it's very important. It's also very important to highlight what the Chief said. We all heard about being a good Samaritan, right? That's very important, and we're asking you to be a good Samaritan today as well. There are a lot of folks who may not have been able to make it here today. This will be on the cable television later. However, remember this: if you could pass on what you learned here today to one of your friends who may be a shut-in or unable to be here, and you help them save thousands of dollars because they did not fall to a scam because you told them what you learned here today, think how good that's going to make you feel. That's the way we need to be within our community of Grafton. We want to take care of each other because think of it, when we're all working together and helping one another and protecting one another, we're strong and no scammer is going to get through. So it's very important to keep that in mind. Finally, let's hear from Zachary.
Hi, Zach Hubach, specializing with the Secret Service. I fall underneath the Boston office. I cover Central and Western Mass. Obviously, the Secret Service is known for protecting the president, vice president, other protectees. But we were actually originally under the Department of the Treasury, so we investigate financial crimes to include everything we're talking about, different frauds and scams. We are very involved with crypto and also cyber crimes, network intrusions, a whole host of things. So related to this panel, we get calls every single week from people that have been scammed in various ways, from amounts $50,000 all the way up into the millions. It's unbelievable, and people talked about technology, how that's impacting things now. Just makes the dollar amounts go up, the victim amounts go up. So hopefully everybody can take something from today. And I would say prevention is the best, because it's very difficult to retrieve funds. Sometimes it's possible, but if it just never happens to begin with, that's the best route. So.
All right. Thank you, Zachary. You know, folks, I've been doing this for a number of years now, and one of the best things that I've learned from all this is that education is the best weapon we have to fight scams and fraud. The more educated we are about these scams, the more we're in the know, the better chances are that we will not fall victim and become a prey and a victim of these scams. So it's very important, that whole educational process of what we're doing here today. And you know, as we said, there are a countless number of scams. And if we were to talk about each one of them, my God, we would probably be here all day and tomorrow talking about them. So we're going to try and focus in on some of the different ways that scams take place. And one of the first ways is scamming by telephone. So we all know that we all get a barrage of telephone calls today. And, you know, they're always calling, hang up, and that sort of thing. But what I want to do is I want you to watch the monitors. I'm going to share an example of what one of these scams looks like, and then we'll have our panelists offer their remarks and comments about it.
Hello?
Hello, Grandpa? It's me.
Tim? Is that you? You sound funny. What? Is everything okay?
Yes, it's Tim. It must be a bad connection. I'm down in Mexico with my buddies. They found drugs in the car. My friend brought them. He didn't tell me. I swear I didn't know. But they're arresting me because the car's rented in my name.
Did you call your parents?
No, I don't want them to find out. Please don't tell them. You and I have always been really close. Could you help me out, please?
Tim, okay. What do you need?
I don't know. They just put me in this room and they gave me this lawyer.
Hello, this is Roberto Mendez. Who am I speaking to?
This is Paul Sims. Sir, what's going on?
Your grandson was pulled over for speeding, and the arresting officer said they could smell marijuana, and he searched the vehicle and he found drugs in the trunk.
No.
Your grandson has been arrested.
There's no way. Tim doesn't do drugs.
That's what he said too.
No way.
The good news is, I can help him out. I know the arresting officer, and I can cut a deal with him. This won't be easy, and he won't be free, but his arrest will never show up in the USA.
Okay. What do you need?
$2,500.
I'm $2,500. I've got the money, but I'm gonna have to go to the bank.
After you've got the $2,500, go to the nearest gas station or the convenience store and buy 5 prepaid money cards and put $500 on each of them. Can you have this done in an hour?
I believe I can.
It is important that you do, because the arresting officer is off duty soon and I need to give him the money before he leaves.
Okay. Hello?
Mr. Sims, This is Roberto Mendez. Did you load the money onto the cards?
Yeah, I've got it.
I need you to scratch off the silver seal on the back and then read me the numbers. And once you have done this, your grandson will be released.
Grandpa, thank you so much. As soon as I get home, I'll do whatever it takes to pay you back. I swear. Thanks. Bye, Grandpa.
I understand that that is one of the most common scams today, and it's growing in popularity, the grandparent scam. We'll turn it over to our panelists. Someone want to jump in? Maybe Michael, and give a reaction to what you see here.
Well, first of all, those are pretty good actors, I'd say. You know, it is, I should have said this at the opening. Well, I want to personally acknowledge how incredibly effective you've been at bringing together not just this panel today, but consistently throughout the years. You've really made this your mission, and it shows. And I don't know how often you can get these kind of cats herded together, but you seem to do it. So I don't know how, but I'm really grateful, and I hope everybody recognizes how really good Walter is committed to this work. Look, the thing about the grandparent schemes and, frankly, the IRS, these are the two kind of areas I'm thinking mostly about. I heard this expression years ago. The panelists have probably heard me say it more than once, but it's called hijacking the amygdala, which is a part of your brain which is not the rational part of your brain. It's like this emotional, it overwhelms you. And when you think about it, when you hear grandchild arrested or you hear IRS on the phone, you aren't thinking very rationally at that immediate moment, those 5 or 10 seconds. And that's all it takes. They know, scammers know ultimately, and it goes back to what Jonathan said, always worth repeating. This is about a quick and easy way of hijacking your emotions, get you to act quickly, and do so for rational reasons. I mean, who wouldn't be excited if the IRS is calling and telling you owe money? I laugh because, you know, it's that's why they do it. And the grandkids thing, that story, think about it. Does that story ring true to you? Yeah, actually it does. To me it does. It's like, oh yeah, that's about how it happens, right? The grandkids out, rent the car, the whole bit. So I won't repeat, but I will say this. When it comes to how do you deal with this, you know, hanging up the phone takes an act of courage right there. It really does. But I would say to you that all of the people that I've ever talked to on the subject say, hang up. And what do you do next? Hopefully you have the grandkid's phone number, or you have the parents of your own children in that sequence, and say, hey, did Tommy is there a trip to Mexico in his going on right now, whatever, and then instantly it's all over. You realize, oh shoot, right? But the idea that you do anything other than hang up, that gets you in trouble. So I say to you that that's the reaction, and it's scary, but it's the only way to ensure that you are not then going down that path where all of it's emotional and none of it's rational.
Zachary, we've heard a lot of folks today, or I've heard stories how with these grandparent scams, what they do is they say, maybe it's not the gift cards. They'll say, take money, and you go to this Bitcoin machine down the street, and you deposit the money into the Bitcoin machine. I go, I can't believe it, because first of all, you know, I don't even know what Bitcoins is in cryptocurrency, and I'm going to be putting money in there. Yeah. Zachary, do you see that happening? Is that something the Secret Service is monitoring?
Yeah, so Bitcoin is one of the main things we're looking into lately, not just with this type of scam, but all types of scams. Bitcoin scammers, they love cryptocurrency because what you can do is get the money sent to them. I say money using that term loosely with crypto. It's an interesting concept, you know. So the crypto is sent to them, and a lot of times they work the crypto through various exchanges and ultimately wind it up in foreign countries where it's tough for us to get that crypto back. However, we can look into it and trace the crypto, and we do have a lot of success stories finding those funds and getting them back to the victims, but time is definitely of the essence because they move it very quickly. With this specific scam, I wanted to bring up two things that just popped into my head just by watching the video. AI and like number masking or voice over IPs. So with these new technologies, I'll start with AI, where the supposed grandson calls up, "Hey, Grandpa," with AI, if a scammer had a recording of, say, the actual grandson's voice, they could create a message, so they call up to the grandfather, it sounds legit. Okay, it's him, great, I'll send the money. So that's one thing to definitely keep in mind. Don't just solely trust your senses when it comes to what someone's voice sounds like. Number two, voice over IPs and number masking. So there are a lot of scams that happen where someone will say, hey, I was just reading about one yesterday, came across my desk. The sheriff's department locally, they called me and said I had to send money to them and all this. And the number comes back to them, the number that called me, when I looked it up. With voice over IPs and these different services now, what a scammer can do is they can reach out to a provider, and that provider will assign phone numbers that they can use. So the scammer can reach out and say, hey, I want to have whatever number, be the number show up when I call someone. So you as the possible victim, you get a number that pops up on your phone. Oh, it's my friend, it's my relative. That's what it comes up as. Oh, it's got to be them. Once again, don't totally believe that. Kind of like what was already talked about. Reach out, you call the person directly, call somebody that knows them and to verify. So talking about technology, just wanted to mention those few things.
And I think, to Zachary's point, I think it's very, very important that in any of these scenarios, the key thing is first stop and then verify. Stop and verify. Never just quickly react with your emotions, because that's when you really get into trouble. And I keep on trying to learn that myself too. I feel like I'm at the Golden Globe Awards, when the Master of Ceremonies is trying to move it along, because I know everybody's looking forward to lunch and the special lunch that's being provided by Homefield. So let me try and move forward here with our next video example. This one, let's see how many of you are aware of this scam.
My goals were to retire and see the world, and I couldn't wait to get retired. I had met my financial objectives. I was looking so forward. I was on top of the world. I've never married, and I thought, you know what, if I want to get married, now's the time to do it. So I thought, I'll try a dating site. I did Match.com. And 2 weeks passed, and that's when we started talking together. We were going to see each other, meet each other in person within the week. Then he traveled with his business, and so he had to leave and go to California and do business meetings. And I was very flexible with that because I'd worked all my life. I know what it's like of putting work first. Every morning, I would get an email of a poem that he wrote for me. Every morning, I would also get, just, hi, honey, how are you doing? How was your night? When I get to the States, I can't wait to be with you. Within a month, he was just very, very heavy in terms of the dating relationship. And this is a mistake. If I made a mistake, it was that I didn't cut it off then. $150,000, $250,000, $75,000, make a check for $250,000, and then make another $50,000 check. I sent money to China and Hong Kong at the end, and people say, how can you give money to a stranger? He wasn't a stranger at that point. I mean, the way they know how to hook you and psychological manipulation. You know, they know how to do what they do. They have a script, they have a book that tells them everything of what to do. I knew in August 2019 that I would probably end up being poor with him. And I just thought, okay, I can live with him and be poor. That's okay, as long as we're together. I sold my home in May. The reason being is that I had no more money.
So, Chief, you see any examples like this, perhaps within the town of Grafton?
Fortunately, not on that scale, but, you know, there are scams out there. People, you know, they ask for small amounts of money when they meet, and you never know who you're talking to on the other end. And as, you know, the victim said, they basically have a playbook to go by, what to do. And if you don't answer the right way, they'll go to another page to read off, you know, to garner sympathy. It all starts off innocently, but it's not innocent, you know, which I did a Chiefs column about that too, for those who aren't reading mine. So I usually put those out for Valentine's Day because we do get calls on that, you know. And that's not just, you know, for seniors, it's also for people that are, especially those that, you know, they're sad and they have a breakup or whatever. And you wonder, how do they know who to target? Well, social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, Twitter, people put a lot of their emotions. They pour a lot of their emotions. Sorry, Bob. They pour their emotions out on Facebook and social media. And I never understood it. But and people go through this. Like I said before, there's people out there scamming is their job. And they go through, you know, they get on sites and whatnot, and they see the people, the lonely hearts, as it were, and this is how they find victims and they manipulate them. So, you know, what can I tell you is if somebody starts asking you for money that you're talking to online, it's very simple. They're not stealing your identity or anything, hopefully, but just don't send them anything. You know, why would they be doing that? You haven't even met face to face yet. You don't know, you know.
Well, you know, one of the sad parts about all this, too, is that a lot of times you have an older adult, they're living by themselves, and guess what? They're lonely.
Mm-hmm.
They're lonely, right? They want to talk to someone. And next thing you know, through that relationship over the internet or the email, they're forming a friendship with someone, and this person, the scammer, is like, you know, evil. They just want to get your money, and they want to form and lead you on, develop the relationship. I've heard cases where it could be a year, 2 years of this relationship going, and then at a certain point, well, you know, I'd like to fly out, but something happened. My mother got ill, and I don't have enough money now to put her, you know, have a surgery for her. Can you send money? And that's when they take the money from you. And of course, at that time, you form that relationship. Mary, do you see things like this on the level of the work that you do at the Attorney General's office, where you have folks, you know, like scammed like this?
Well, romance scams are very prevalent. The Federal Trade Commission keeps a list of, you know, what scams are reported to the FTC, and romance scams are one of the main types of scams. And as you said, these can be, you know, the scammers can be patient. They can take their time. This is their job. It's, you know, they get up every morning and write the nice little email to 50 people, perhaps. And I hate to say, you know, to give this advice here because you're all in your pretty yellows and orange colors, but I'm bringing in some gloom here because you have to be skeptical. You have to, you know, we all want love and romance in our lives, and we want friends and people that we can communicate with, but have that dose of skepticism. And if people start asking for money, even if it's over a period of time, you gotta end it, or talk to someone else. Talk to your trusted advisors or family members about this, and listen to what they're saying, because the scammers are very good at what they do. They know exactly what to say.
Exactly.
You know, I just want to pick up on a point that Mary made, and I have a feeling it might be on your mind. Let me put an emphasis on this. The other hard thing, I think about the hard stuff. One is, how do you hang up on your grandson who's been voice You know, it's AI, and it's, for all intents and purposes, your grandson. That's very hard to do. But the other thing that I think is really a challenge is to acknowledge that you have to talk to somebody else about this. You know, I think the biggest protection scammers have is recognizing that the vast majority of us do not want to admit that they've done something stupid. I mean, this lady is a head of a major company and she's retired, she's got $2 million. You know, and we judge people all the time, right? So that's a huge wall to bust through. But I'm going to tell you something. Every aspect of scammers, when it comes down to whatever the actual scheme is, you can boil it down to a fundamental concept. They know you don't want to be embarrassed and you don't want to admit you made a mistake. So, how do you reduce the likelihood? I mean, really reduce the likelihood practically. It's bring someone else that you trust into this. It's okay. You know, that nice lady probably should have mentioned it to her son or to her best friend. And just by doing that, you're going to get another dose of a reality, or at least objectivity, and some other set of ears and eyes are there to help you get to the next level, which is to say, you know what, Santos, take a hike, right? But if you're doing that all alone, and you are lonely, Walt, this is the biggest, I think, crisis we have right now in this country. Loneliness among 18 to 25-year-olds, let alone 60 plus, right? It all goes to that point that it's, if you're lonely and you are motivated, but then if you're lonely, that's almost by definition, you are not socially connected. You've got to find that protection. Family, trusted friend, the priest, the rabbi, whomever, but that's the best way I could think of to protect against being victimized.
And you know, Michael, you're so right with that too, because we talk about loneliness. I applaud all of you for coming here today, because a lot of times as you get to be an older adult, you just want to sit at home. You don't have that up and go and, you know, put your feet up. You want to watch television or the soap or whatever, you know, but we all need that social connection. We need to have other friends that we could talk to, you know, family members or a girlfriend or a boyfriend. That's so important. So I do applaud you for coming here today and being part of this whole event. Moving on to the next one is viruses or scams that occur over the computer. And a lot of you, you know, they say, well, older adults, they don't use computers and all that. My father-in-law, he doesn't have a cell phone, he doesn't have a computer. I think he's the only one I know in that age that doesn't, because a lot of seniors and a lot of older adults have computers. But let me show you this video and then we'll talk.
My name is Phyllis Weisberg. I'm a 90-year-old widow. I have 4 children, 4 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, with another one on the way. I was the victim of an online scam. The scammers managed to get into my checking account. They removed $20,000. This all began when my computer came up with a flashing light that it was unable to use it, and a phone number from Microsoft with a big ad that something was wrong with the computer and that they could take care of it if I would just call this number. And I called that number and they answered Microsoft. They were there to help me. They were the scam department of Microsoft, which of course it was not. The first thing was they warned me. This was the only warning that I got. Nothing, no physical threats or anything, but a warning not to discuss this on the telephone, because these bad guys could get in and hear all the conversations that were on the phone. And that's when they presented me with, they sent me this list with the address of this foreign country and how to send a wire, which I had never in my life sent a wire before. I had no idea. And I thought, well, I'll go to the branch closer to home, where I always go, which is where I went. And that's where I had a very young fellow who I'd never met before in the bank. And he asked the same questions that they told me he would ask. Where is the money? Why are you doing this? And the answer was, it's a real estate venture, which was, of course, obviously not my idea. I had all the answers programmed for me, so I would give the right answers to him. My first reaction was total embarrassment, that I would do anything that stupid. And actually, it took me quite a while to get over this, that I was not the only one who was being taken like this. And all I can do is warn other people and just hope that this will help one person to avoid doing this. It would be a blessing to me to do it.
You know, the scams come in all different kind of forms and all that. So you saw what happened there. But you also have situations today where, you know, you get scams like this over the internet. It even happens on television. And I'm going to ask our special friend here, Eric, what does he think about, and you've seen this on television, these commercials that talk about, oh, buy gold today. You want to put your money in gold. Take it out of the stock market, put it in gold, buy gold. Eric, what's your advice about some of that stuff? Is that stuff legitimate?
Well, I'm not allowed to give you advice about your gold investments, but I will say that your emotion is key. It's a key element that several folks have mentioned. You should not be that excited about an investment. I mean, you're not getting something. You're getting a chance. You're getting a chance. It's like buying a lottery ticket to some extent. If you invest in a stock or a bond or gold, it could go up, it could go down in value, you could lose all of the value of it. So anytime someone's trying to get you really excited or really scared, and especially when they get you a loan or they get you in a situation where you're afraid of going around to some trusted source, those are all red flags, and that's when you really need to be on guard. So, my grandfather lost a lot of money to silver. He used to read this silver newsletter back in the 80s, and they were always recommending silver. The silver newsletter. What a surprise! It never said that silver was not a promising investment. So think about this goes back to even legitimate things. Like if you're buying insurance versus investing in the stock market, and the person you're dealing with is only licensed to sell insurance, they're going to recommend insurance for you. They're not going to recommend the stocks and bonds. And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily corrupt or anything, but that's what their position is. So even if someone is legitimate and from some gold company, they're still pushing the thing that they have. So you need to, I sometimes get a little pretentious and quote this old Greek Stoic philosopher, Epictetus, and he said, don't give your mind over to be mystified and controlled by others. Don't do it. If you're very excited or very scared, stop, back off. Your two things you can do. One is withdraw. And as far as phone culture, that first thing, phones have changed over the decades. When I was a kid in the 80s and the phone rang, even at dinner time, my father would answer it. He'd get very mad, and then he would tell us to go answer it. You don't have to answer the phone anymore. There's the proportion of calls that are scams now is so large that if you don't know exactly who the person is and the number right off the bat, you don't have to answer it. Very few of us are emergency room surgeons, okay? Very few of us have things like that we absolutely have to deal with right now. So anytime you're excited, scared, take a step back, calm yourself down, withdraw. The other thing you do is ask a million questions, because con artists, though they do research on people, they also have these running lists of just many people to call. And if you ask question after question after question, every time you do that, they get deflated a little bit and they decide it's not worth my time. I'll move on to the next sucker. So be wary of any excitement, gold or otherwise.
Carl, as you saw in the end of that video, she was encouraged to go to her financial institution, withdraw money. Of course, at Homefield, just like any other credit union or any other bank, tellers, managers of the branch, they're all trained to recognize these things. If you would just remind folks again about the process, how folks are safeguarded when they come into a place like Homefield.
To everyone's point so far, it's the delay. Stop, think about what's happening. I know the emotions are there, and they're playing on your emotions. Stop and just think about things for a second. when someone tells you to tell someone else basically a lie, that should send up flares all over the place. You're sitting in front of a member service rep and you've been programmed to answer the question on why this is happening. Don't. We had several circumstances when we've used this kind of, we probe questions, where's this going? Well, you've never sent checks over to Hong Kong, or you've never wired a fund into Montreal, Canada, or Mexico City. Why are you doing this now? Well, and they say, well, I'm doing a real estate transaction. Well, you live in senior housing. Why would you be doing a real estate transaction? So you ask those questions. I know those are the type of things that we're trained to do. But when you're asked to lie, that should be even more of a concern. Throw up a flare. Make sense to everyone?
Absolutely.
Well, we have one final example, and then we'll go on to lunch. But I hate to say it, but data shows that the worst of all these scams, the very worst of all these scams, the one that occurs the most often, they're being conducted by someone we know, a family member, someone close to us. Here's an example, and then we'll talk.
A 74-year-old Arthur Green spent years building his lakeside home. He says recently he was persuaded to sign it over to his granddaughter and was told he could live out his days there.
And all of a sudden she just like I don't know what, snap of the finger, she changed. She got money hungry.
His granddaughter tried to evict him and sell the property.
Arthur was absolutely at risk of homelessness. He was also completely impoverished because this land and house is the only thing of any value he owned in the world.
Dennis Cully, Green's lawyer, says financial exploitation of seniors is all too common and often goes unreported. A Consumer Reports investigation finds theft and fraud by loved ones is on the rise.
Caregivers, family members, neighbors, they can use all kinds of tactics to raid their assets.
They can be as obvious as forging signatures on checks, begging for loans that are never paid back, or abusing power of attorney.
When you give power of attorney to somebody, it can give them unfettered access to your accounts. Somebody who misuses those can do real damage, and that's a real problem for the elderly.
Consumer Reports says to help prevent elder abuse, have bank and investment statements sent to a person you trust to monitor accounts, arrange for direct deposit and automatic bill pay, and consult a reputable elder law attorney for advice on wills and limiting power of attorney. Fortunately for Arthur, a legal services program for the elderly he consulted obtained a court order voiding the granddaughter's deed, returning the property to him.
I really love the kitty.
That's neat.
Mary, do you experience something like this on a national level, and I should say also within the state of Massachusetts?
Well, we do. Unfortunately, financial exploitation by family members and friends is common. It's very difficult because, an older person can do what they want with their own money. If they truly want to, give full access to their accounts to a family member, then they're giving full access to their accounts to a family member. And it's very difficult for even, lawyers or others to go in and say, you really don't want to give this power of attorney. But I would again give the advice of share what you're doing with others so that, one person isn't responsible, like this granddaughter here, for your assets. Be fully informed about what you're doing in terms of real estate transactions. If you are signing something away, you really have to understand what that means. And it does happen quite often. We talked about scams; those are stranger financial exploitation. But unfortunately, from the family members, it's very common.
And I think it's also very important to note that when you do a decision like this, power of attorney, to always find someone that you could really trust. Mm-hmm. And I think that becomes very, very important. That whole element of trust, and also realizing that and many times it's good to have someone else whose name is on the account, because you get in situations, and I'm going to open this up to any of you, you get in situations where, I only have my name on my account, I die, and now where's the money go? How does that get tied up legally? And if you have kids and their names aren't on that as co-signers or something, can you comment, please, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I have a sordid background, and not just as an AARP person, but a former prosecutor and a lawyer. For 45 years, I've done elder law. And I just want to point out, I'm glad we're talking about this as sort of the end. I don't know if it's going to affect our appetites, but there is a common theme here on this subject of don't do this kind of thing without at least one other person involved. So let me give you the specifics. It is very common that the granddaughter says to Grammy, I have a lawyer. I want to take you to my lawyer who will draw up a, document, power of attorney or, a reservation of life estate, whatever the document is. And right off the bat, if you think about it, to trust a lawyer is very important, and you should. I mean, I'm not here to say anything other than recognize where the duty of loyalty is. So it should be your lawyer. And if you don't know a lawyer, go to the lawyer referral. Go to the Mass Bar Association. Easy peasy. You really think about it that way. Their duty of loyalty is to you. Another lawyer brought in, the duty of loyalty is to the client, and the client may not be Mom, Grammy, it's the other one. So that's common sense point number one. Number two is recognize that these legal instruments are extremely powerful. And once you do things like a power of attorney, as was mentioned, you are creating opportunity. And so in the end, it's that have that lawyer be yours. And the second thing is, if you're going to do this within family, and there's nothing wrong with that. And, I mean, I got to tell you, that's 90% of all of these arrangements that are legitimate are within family, and they should be. But if you have more than one child, make sure there's that other child. Hey, just so you know, Johnny and I are going to do I'm giving him my power of attorney. Let another family member be aware. And if you're totally alone in that, to Mary's point, it's maybe the strangest thing to be said. But people have a right to do what they want with their money. Even do stupid things with their situation. And if you want to give all your money to the drug-addicted grandchild, and as much as our good friend here is trying to, get you away from that, in the end, they have that right. And so, with that in mind, the best protection is at least one other set of eyes and ears. If it's a legal instrument, the lawyer should be yours. And those are 2 points that I would emphasize, because I think with that, you've got a much greater likelihood of avoiding a problem.
There we go. All right, I think we're at the point for final word, right? So we can get to lunch. Zachary, very briefly, I'm going to ask all of you, and start with Zachary, to please just give, in 30 seconds, give a final word, the key thing that you want all the folks to remember today from what we talked about.
It's kind of already been touched on earlier. Everything runs off emotion. So put your emotions to the side and just try to think rationally whenever you're presented with any of these situations. And number two, with my position, some of the things I run into and saw video examples and hear it talked about is where quote unquote officials that are scammers reach out to potential victims. As a federal agent, I will never call you and tell you where to send money to. Okay? And no other federal agency or local police department will do that as well. So definitely keep that in mind. And then me and the chief were just talking a second ago about a scam he ran into where the scammers sent a copy of supposed credentials. I can tell you one thing, I'm never sending you a copy of my credentials, okay? So just little things to keep in mind, at least on my end and stuff like that.
Chief?
Yeah, there's always something new out there. You could look at, and I'm a member of AARP. I don't look like I'm old enough, but I am.
Junior member, Chief.
Sorry.
You're a junior
That's
member.
it. But, you know, if you don't have a family member you can trust, that, you know, the only person that in your family is the one that you think is scamming you, contact us or contact the, you know, Council on Aging, Shannon or Lisa. They're outstanding sources of information. And if they don't have the answers, they'll contact us or they'll get the answers from somebody. So you have that resource there for those of you that come for lunch or whatever, or any activities. You can just pull them off to the side and talk to them. I hope you don't mind me saying that, Shannon. But you know, the thing about as far as asking, when you are scammed or you think you're being scammed, they ask you to go to the bank. They're onto that now too. Now these scammers are saying, go to CVS, go to Walmart, go to Walgreens, whatever. Get the cards that we want you to get, which is just totally, you know, to pay a government agency or whatever. That's not going to happen because they know that the banks and the credit unions or whatever are wise to that. They train their employees well to spot potential victims, and so they don't want you to do that. So the person at Walmart's not going to ask you why you're removing, you know, buying $10,000 worth of game cards or money packs or whatever. So. That's just something to think of too. Like I said before, please pass this information on to your friends, those that couldn't make it today. Final note, the second to the last video, I got a call last night from Windows asking me about my computer. Now what's funny is I have a cell phone from the town, so why are they calling the town of Grafton police department? So they don't know who they're talking to for the most part. Unless it's a planned, you know, a targeted victim. But they called and asked me about my computer from Windows, and I like to play with them. I know a scam when I have, so I play with them for a little while. You know, I'd like to give you my social security number. We can do this right away, and then they get wise and they hang up. So, but they'll call anybody. You know, that's what you got to realize. They'll call anybody. So don't be embarrassed if something happens where you are targeted or you think you might have fallen for it. We've had doctors, physicians that have been scammed. We've had, you know, reputable people that have been scammed, intelligent people that you wouldn't think so, but it happens to everybody because they're so convincing, because that's all they do. Just take that and please pass it on to whoever you know. Thank you.
Carl, let's hold you to the last final word. Let's go to Mary next.
Okay. I would just say, repeat everything that's been said in terms of feel empowered to hang up the phone, feel empowered to just tell someone you think it's a scam. Do not feel embarrassed or ashamed if you do fall prey to one of these scams, because they're out there and they call my work cell phone all the time. Do not click on a text message. If you get a text message from Amazon saying, you know, click here for your package. If you're not expecting a package from Amazon, then that's a total scam. So we didn't touch upon the text links. Just being here today, you're taking a great first step. So thank you for being here.
Michael.
I just want to end with a couple of quick thank yous. First, a shout out to Shannon. You know, when I walked into this big complex, I was just stunned at the activities that are happening all around us. And that's a real tribute to you personally and the town of Grafton's commitment to its seniors. So kudos to Grafton. The second thing I want to say is I want to give a shout out to the audience. You know, I'm kind of used to working with audiences. You are the most attentive people. You're all, I mean, some of you are like at the edge of your seat. So this is good. This is really good. Everything we've talked about, I'm not going to repeat it. I just want to say, think it through. Share the information, like Walt said, with your friends. That brochure is from ARP is going to give you a constant refresher on the new stuff happening. And with that, thank you for the honor of being present with some great people, and especially the audience that was so good.
Eric?
Yeah, thank you to everyone thank you for having us and everyone being here. I'm just going to take the low road and give you a plug for investor.gov. That's our website that educates investors about scams and fraud prevention. So anything I would have said if I were giving a long lecture on this stuff is in that website. So investor.gov is the best place to go to find out more about the basics of saving and investing, how to pay off your debts, but also scams to look out for. I guess the only other thing I'd say is feel free to reach out to us, boston@sec.gov. That's our email address. Either another attorney or I will check that. We split up the week. Or you can call our 8800 line, 617-573-8800. Even if you call us with something that's not in our jurisdiction, we'll help find the right person for you. And if it does involve stocks, bonds, things like that, it might be helpful to us to investigate, or there may be some way we can assist you. Thanks.
And of course, our panelists will be around afterward, so feel free to approach any of them if you have any questions or want to share any comments or stories. Now for the final words, you realize Homefield Credit Union is the sponsor today, putting this all together, taking care of me, helping or asking me to organize this, as well as the luncheon, the whole bit that Shannon's going to host in the Senior Center. So Carl Moisen, President and CEO of Homefield, for the final word.
Thank you, Walt, and thank you for all your efforts. When you approached us about this, and we jumped right on board because we see these things happening every day as a financial institution. I live and work in town. I've been here for about 15 years. Our doors are always open. You have a question, you have a thought, you're a member, you're not a member, come on in and talk to us. We'd love to have you in. If we have free coffee, you can come in and grab a cup of coffee and knock on my door and say, I want to run this by you. We're a resource for you. We're not just a financial institution. We just don't cash checks. We're a resource, and use us. Most of us live and work in town. So that's what we want. We want you to be a member of the community that you feel comfortable enough to come in and talk to us. That's what we're all about. Thank you.
How about a round of applause for the panel? Well, folks, that wraps up our program for today. Again, I thank you all for being here. I thank our folks that have been watching on Grafton Community Television as well. Let's go have lunch.